Before we get into the tour, I'd like to provide a little background information about the layout. The HO scale layout is in a room off the back of my garage. It's approximately 10 by 30 feet. There are two levels, and I use a transfer tray to move cars between the two. I'll talk about the lower level first. It is a single track main line in a sort of folded or collapsed oval. The main line provides for continuous running for one of three Class 1 railroads that I choose to operate depending upon a coin toss, roll of the dice, or just my mood. Either Canadian National, Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, or Chicago Northwestern will show up. The concept is for the mainline train to deliver and pick up cars at an interchange yard with a freelance short line called the North Bay Railroad. Time frame is mostly the late 1970s and early 1980s, with first and second generation diesel locomotives in use. I do have one brass steamer that I run for excursions. I do not conduct operations in the sense that I have any sort of timetable or schedule. What I do is put together a switching problem that I make up from index cards for customers, and then more cards for railroad cars appropriate for their product. Full or empty cars are provided by the big railroad as a starting point. They are switched out by the North Bay, and empty or full cars are returned to the yard for pickup by the next major railroad train. That completes what I call a cycle. The tour will simulate one of these cycles, and in doing so I hope to show you the layout. It is DCC, and all the locos are sound equipped. Most of the buildings on the layout are kit bash plastic. A few are straight kits, especially the non-rail stores and stations and such, and a couple are scratch built. I should also mention that most of the places and towns, stores, customers, streets, and etc. are associated with English crime and mystery authors, characters, and actors, that is, if the stories have been made into TV or into movies, or places in their works, or other writers in their works. Some of these will be familiar to you. Others, well, I'd be surprised. Don't worry, I won't be showing you all of these, and this isn't Trivia Pursuit, nor will there be a quiz at the end. My wife and my favorite author is Dorothy L. Sayers. You'll see several references to her works. She wrote her mystery stories in the 20s and 30s, and her hero character is Lord Peter Wimsey. To help orient you, here's a diagram of the layout. Let's call the top of the diagram north and go from there. A cycle starts at Holmes Junction on the south side of the layout perimeter. I'll talk about the upper level, or the upper division, later. This first part of the tour will take us from Holmes Junction around through Sayersville, Deep River, and finally end up at Williams Corner. I don't have any off-scene staging. Instead, I make up an initial delivery train on a side track that represents another line that joins the layout. Pull the locos, caboose, and cars from storage shelves beneath the layout. As I said, we start at Holmes Junction. Today our train is being pulled by a pair of Burlington SD24s and is about to take the main, with the cars destined for the interchange with the North Bay at Williams Corner. The train enters the main going clockwise around the layout, immediately goes through a tunnel where it loops and reverses, coming out on the other side of the layout, and passes through Sayersville before looping through the scene divider at the end of the peninsula. It exits the peninsula scene divider at Barnaby Tunnel and into a hilly area of the layout called Midsummer Ridge. It crosses Pether Bridge, continues through a cut, over another short bridge, and through another short tunnel, before curving around Deep River and over the fold-up entry to the layout, curving around the west side of the layout and entering Wimsey Corner. You're here on the map. Wimsey Corner is a very quiet crossroads farming town. It has a couple of feed stores, a pub called the Red Cow. I like pubs, so I have a few of those on the layout, and a mechanic shop. There's also a small passenger train where we find North Bay's RDC, the Whippet. I sometimes run a Canadian National passenger trains, so the Whippet will run from Wimsey Corner to Sayersville and back. North Bay has two railroad customers here, the Watson grain elevator and its associated feed and seed store. Grain and grain products make up the single largest rail commodity on the layout. I happen to really like grain hoppers. As I mentioned, Whimsy Corner is the side of the interchange yard between the main line and North Bay. Our Burlington train has swapped out cars and is departing. Actually, I'll run this train around the layout several times to simulate distance and time. The whole layout is only about 2 square miles. So what are you going to do? We don't have any cars for either the co-op or feed store this time, so the duty North Bay engine is moved into position, hooked up and enters the main line where North Bay has trackage rights over a short distance. We're still in the north perimeter section opposite the aisle from Midsummer Ridge. The train crosses Route 48, Garrison Creek, and a rail trail before returning to home tracks at the Lake Wobegon cutoff, and ends up on the east side of the layout. I've been a fan of Garrison Keillor's A Prairie Home Companion radio show since the early 1980s. In Lake Wobegon you'll find several places associated with the show: Powdermilk Biscuits, Sidetrack Tap, Bertha's Kitty Boutique, Chatterbox Cafe, and Bob's Bank, that little green mobile home on Main Street, is banking at the sign of the Sock, whose motto is neither a borrower nor lender be, and of course, Ralph's Pretty Good Grocery, are just some of the references to the show. The series of buildings on the right is Cornerstone's Merchants Row 1. Those on the left are old IHC kits. There are 3 rail customers in town: Lake Wobegon Valley Co-op, Keillor's Feed and Seed, and Lake Wobegon Lumber. Today the local pulls 1 hopper from the grain elevator and spots 3 empties. We have a pickup and delivery at the lumberyard, but as these are facing points, it'll be serviced on the return trip. Even small towns have their hooligans. Most of the structures on the layout have lights, and there are street lamps in all the towns, so I can do night operations. It's very different, be quite a challenge, but also could be quite a lot of fun. Our moves completed, we move on through town and run parallel to the main line back on the south side of the layout in Holmes Junction, where we started this exercise. The track continues under Route 24, enters a smaller tunnel, and loops around to cross the main line and enter Sayersville to do the bulk of the switching. We are now back in Sayersville. Our train has crossed the main and entered the industrial area. Sayersville is the largest of the towns and has several rail customers. Almost everything in Sayersville is a reference to a crime writer or in one form or another. You'll find references to Colin Dexter's Morse, Endeavor, and Inspector Lewis, several associations with Agatha Christie's works, and the TV series Foyle's War, a few others, and of course Sayers. On the east end, the town is mostly merchant stores, a restaurant or two, and the ever-popular pub. On Crab Street, we have the Endeavor, which is a pub, and I believe that's Morris's Jag parked just outside. Next to that is Bunter's Men's Store and Miss Marple's Tea Shop. Across the street are 2 businesses named for 2 of Sayers' books: Five Red Herrings, which is a restaurant in this case, and just downhill is the 9 Tailors, a haberdashery. Crab Street continues to descend and passes under the railroad viaduct before it turns and meets McKern Avenue. McKern Avenue is where you'll find the pharmacy called Strong Poison. It's another DLS novel. And Wilbraham's Jewelry, whose motto is "A happy wife means a happy life." The only rail customer in this section of town is a power plant. If the power plant is chosen as a customer for the cycle, a dedicated coal train will be made up and make the delivery and the pickup. The midsection of Sayersville has the passenger station, Foyle and Milner Manufacturing, and Pym's Publishing for rail customers. The Lewis and Jones building on the backdrop is not a rail-served business. When the Whippet arrives, it comes in behind a passenger station, and the travelers head into town to do their business via taxi or bus or they head across the parking lot to meet the CN passenger train. On today's run, empty newsprint boxcars will be pulled from Pym's Publishing, and a full boxcar will be spotted. The cafe across from the station is called Michael's Kitchen. In the TV series Foyle's War, the character, Detective Chief Superintendent Foyle, is played by the actor Michael Kitchen. So naturally, we have to have Michael's Kitchen. Baker Street cuts across the western part of town. North Bay's customers in this part of town include Wilvercombe Flatiron and Die Company, Vane Distributors, and Denver Meats, whose motto is "Trust us, you don't want to know." In the bottom right picture, our loco is pulling 2 full air slide hoppers and 5 empty grain hoppers from the Raw Bits Tall Boys Mill Complex. These will be replaced by the full grain hopper we picked up in Lake Wobegon and 2 empty air slide hoppers. The full air slides that are being pulled will be forwarded to Bamfield Foods in the Upper Division. Tall Boys also has a loading dock side and a corn syrup oil tank car loading spot. With the movements completed, the loco and caboose will swap ends. Train will head back to Whimsy Corner using the same route in reverse. We still have to do some work in Lake Wobegon, where we pull a boxcar from the lumber yard. We spot a bulkheaded flat. Back in Whimsy Corner, we push the 2 air slide hoppers that we got from Tall Boys into a transfer tray, where they will join 2 boxcars that were moved there before the North Bay train left on its trip. I use a single track transfer tray to manually move cars between the lower level and upper level that I call the Upper Division, in a nod to Michigan's Upper Peninsula. The upper level sits atop most of the perimeter portion of the lower layout and is still very much under construction. I've got the ballast down, several of the buildings completed, and I'm beginning the first level of scenery. I'm using the construction of the upper level to work on the AP quals for structures and civil engineering. The upper level has 3 towns, Brokenwood, Hastings, and Bamfield, and an interchange siding called Oxford Exchange. Cars arrive at the Brokenwood yard, where they are picked up by another North Bay loco, in this case an ST9. Brokenwood is right above Whimsy Corner in the layout, if that helps in orientation. It has 2 customers, a feed and fertilizer dealer and another grain elevator. Today's cars are headed for Bamfield on the opposite side of the room. Like most places, passenger traffic has seen better days. Brokenwood is no exception. The disused passenger station sits next to abandoned tracks and across from a small grain elevator that is also boarded up. As we leave the yard, we go past a section house and a small flag stop station that the Whippet will eventually serve. We pass the outdoor polo arena, go over the Orion Creek, and enter what will be the town of Hastings on the east side of the layout. As you can see, this is directly above Lake Wobegon on the lower level. Hastings will have yet another grain elevator, a passenger station, a freight transfer business, and a couple of non-rail businesses. Lots and lots of work to be done. The train moves around the corner to the Oxford Exchange and Bamfield area, is now back on the south side of the layout and above Holmes Junction. When completed, this area will provide additional switching opportunities with fictitious interchange traffic, more rail customers. And there's a small single loco company that provides switching services for the area. Track goes through the same wall as the first level, but instead of looping back towards the peninsula portion of the layout and above Sayersville, it continues straight, dropping a couple of inches and ends at the room entry door. We call that area Land's End. Land's End is not going to be scenic, but at Land's End I'll be able to swap out some cars by hand, so the return train might generate even more traffic. The idea being that North Bay will drop off some of the cars to be switched by the Bamfield and Hastings, continue down the track and off-site to do more work on its own. On the return trip, it'll pick up anything from B&H, continue back to Brokenwood. As you can see, there's also a lot of work to be done here. To Today we need to spot a boxcar at Bamfield Foods loading dock. We need to swap out the air slide cars picked up from Tallboys at Bamfield's Food Unloader and spot a boxcar at Carter & Co. We also have to pick up a boxcar at Powlett Jones Industries. That building is yet to be built. The B&H switcher will do all this, and the Northway will pick up the cars as it heads back to Oxford Exchange. We finished our work at Bamfield, we pass the OX Tower, and head back to Brokenwood Yard. We shove the air slide hopper and boxcar into the transfer tray so it can be lowered, again manually, to Whimsy Corner, added to the string of cars we picked up during the next cycle. Once that is done, North Bay locos and caboose are stored in their parking spots. The last step before calling it a day is to disassemble and store the Burlington train bits and pieces. That completes a cycle. That's all, folks. Thanks for watching.